All right, I'm getting it.
It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. You know, I kind of forget where I come from. I don't think I've talked about barbecue in episodes, long time episodes. So I promise this time, I said I'm going to start the podcast. I'm going to for once talk and answer anything about barbecue for just a minute because I just forgotten my roots about why we even created that name a long time ago. So I'm going to put a couple of these guys on the spot that are with me. Jim, you live in the heart of barbecue country. What is one of your favorite things that you like to either eat or smoke yourself?
Oh, brisket.
Brisket. More traditional in the state of Texas. I don't care what anybody says. If you're from one of the other barbecue meccas of the world, whether it's Kansas City, Memphis, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, Georgia, it doesn't matter. There's no doubt about it. We can argue all day. Texas is still the king of brisket.
I like to blend it with oak, mesquite, and pecan woods.
That's great. I love those things. So
I bet Jim would put it in a blender. I was like, that's really weird, Jim. Even at your age, I think you still have teeth. That's Gary.
Right now.
I need Gary on this show when we're talking about age.
Why do you have to have him make him feel better about yourself, Jim? You made an interesting comment about the woods. That comes up a lot. A lot of people who smoke, that question gets asked a lot about what. It's funny. I don't tell everybody that a lot because real estate's what I do, and barbecue's just a pastime more than anything. We've done it professionally, and we've seen a lot over the years. But I get a lot of people every week that send me something about, hey, what do you do with this? What do you do with that? And the wood comes up quite a bit. So one thing about brisket, and it's great. I love the mix of woods that you have. Those are great. But one thing a lot of people don't know is it's that the oak is what makes that bark. It's the oak that darkens that brisket up. So when people talk about, stop using my own means against me. It's the oak that really puts that bark on there. A lot of people who don't get the bark that they want, it's because they're not cooking with or smoking with enough oak. So
now, you know what, Robert, here in Austin, I always have problems. I have to explain what Smoker Broker means.
We've talked about it on quite a few of the shows. It's amazing the creativity of a lot of people. Their minds go straight to the vaping fields or the marijuana fields, but it's far from it. It's not.
It's crack cocaine.
Yeah,
it's crack.
I went straight to cigarettes when I first heard the name.
I'd love that. That'd be awesome. I wish I still smoked. That'd be great. I always joke about the story with when we trademarked it. The paralegal, she asked the attorney, she was like, I'm just not comfortable with us getting into trademarking guys that are into stuff that's not legal in the state of Texas. And she goes, what the hell are you talking about? She goes, well, that Smoker Broker guy. She goes, he's a professional barbecue guy that has a huge brokerage. She's like, oh, I had no idea. So yeah, we get a few people that go a lot of different ways with it. Brent, what do you like? What is it that you like barbecue wise?
I really like pork. I like
pork.
pulled pork. I like that Kahlua pork over in Hawaii.
I always
Enjoy that.
Can we get him off the show?
What's that?
Oh, I'm always all about the pulled pork. Growing
Yeah.
up in South Georgia, my cousin
Yeah,
had a barbecue place.
Okay,
And
we're
you
going
got
to argue all here
all
now.
on it, and you got to have some Brunswick stew.
So let's shift with that. The we talked about Texas being the mecca for brisket. Well, if I had to argue if there's a mecca for pork, it's Georgia. In fact, that's where I learned to do. Georgia is infatuated with cooking the whole hog on open pits where they have cinder. They're the ones that created the cinder block smoking, where you literally don't have a pit, you build one, and you have these massive parties. I always like to tell everybody that I was born in southern Louisiana, I was raised in Georgia, and I reside in Texas. And those are pretty good credentials for being in barbecue, because you got probably 3 of the top 5 areas of barbecue.
You can't forget Memphis either now.
And I know, and I'm not discounting Memphis and Kansas City. I'm just saying those are the areas that I'm from. And I notice how I said 5. Well, those are the other 2, and they're the big ones. But she's right. In Georgia, that's where I first started. I hate to say it, but the allure to doing that stuff was watching those guys sit there smoking that stuff and drinking beer all day long. And over time, it's what made me want to do all that. So it's funny she mentioned the pork. I will say this, and then we'll get into our real estate topic. I'm actually glad we did barbecue. I hadn't done it in so long. It made me want to talk about it. Pork is so great because you can feed so many people, and it is one of the best pieces of meat to eat. And it's fun to cook. It's easy to cook. Anybody can smoke pork. And if you're new to it and you're just starting, that's by far the one you want to experiment on first, because it gets more elevated with brisket, and it really gets more elevated with ribs. Believe it or not, ribs are the most difficult one to smoke correctly. Most people would say it's the brisket. It's not. It's the ribs, because the ribs really expose you, because you can truly taste what it is that you did, and from the tenderness side of it too. Brisket is usually, there's only so much taste you can do to a brisket, but you can do 1,000 things to ribs, and that's usually where most professionals show their skill, is in ribs. I find.
Robert had a great aunt in Noonan, Georgia, whose family had at the time, a very famous barbecue restaurant there, and but when she passed away, she took the recipe with her. It was so secret, and then the restaurant went away.
Hey, look, we are on a professional team, and we've almost gotten fist fights when one of them won't share. And we're like, we're on the same team. And we've got guys that have done it before. We've got guys that have done this. And we have almost gotten in fist fights over it. So it's pretty personal when you start getting into what it is that you do. I was telling y'all, I get emails and texts all week long. I tell everybody everything I do. If they ever want to know anything I've won state championships in before, I tell them. I don't mind. If they can recreate it, good for them. Happy for them. All right.
He goes straight to Tony Roma's and brings it to go.
Gets on his Traeger.
We have thought about competitions that we've lost doing that one time. Going, let's just see if they really do tell, if they really know. Especially out in Austin, going to Franklin's, maybe getting some of his brisket and putting it in the case and see how they do. So, anyways, love that opening. We haven't done that in a long time. We should do it more often. I get asked all the time, but we are, in fact, a real estate show. Awkward with the name itself, but we do focus on real estate. Shows based educationally to teach agents out there, clients, everything that it is that we do. And today's subject is by far one of the most important, because not only is it important for real estate, it's important for life itself, and it's setting expectations. I have a storied background and the things I've done. I was in retail at the earlier part of my life in management. I was in executive management as finance and accounting, and I run my own firm for the past 15 years. And I've been in real estate for 20 years, and I've had a lot of money spent on me, well into 7 figures, on how to be customer service oriented, how to be management oriented and business oriented. And if there is anything that is more important, it would be the topic today, which is in setting expectations, because it follows everything we do. It follows in what our day looks like. It follows in, of course, what we do in real estate, and in pretty much all phases of our lives. If you don't have, or you don't set the expectation, then you're pretty much setting yourself up for whatever you get. And if it's bad, that's your own fault. Because if you'd set the expectation, you probably could have stayed out of it. Now, the reason why that's so important for real estate is that a lot of times, even if you tell them the negative side of it, if the negative side of it comes up, at least they were prepared for it. You know, I get accused of being the worst pessimist. I get accused of being the biggest optimist. And that's awkward to go on both of those extremes. And I'll tell you, it's a true statement about me, because I am. Now, the reason why I'm talking about the pessimistic side, I do believe that it's a good idea to tell people the worst that can happen, because if it doesn't, then everything is only better. And if it does happen, we're the first ones to be like, I told you. I told you that this was a possibility. A lot of people who don't like confrontation, which I'm sorry, but it makes you weaker if you don't like confrontation. We can argue about that all day too. Actually, Mark, I know you're always listening. That might be good for the Mentor Project, a good topic, confrontation, because there's a lot to be said about how you handle conflict. That's right. And you know, I forgot to mention on the last show, I do co-host or I'm a member of another podcast called the Mentor Project Live, and we're just now getting it off the ground. We really like what we're seeing in it, because it's talking about the topics we're talking about today. You know, we're focusing on real estate, but in the Mentor Project, we would take that topic to a much higher level, or a much broader level. But confrontation is not something you should be afraid of. If you're skilled in what you do and you have confidence in what you do, you should not be afraid of confrontation. And expectations, a lot of times people don't want to say that negative side of it because they're afraid of the confrontation. They're hoping that it doesn't happen, which that makes you naive. And that's an ugly word. That's something I don't want to ever be called. Naivety is terrible, because I rank it right up there with clueless, you know, and setting expectations puts it out there. Now, Brent, you've been with me a long time.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And Carol's learning a lot of the stuff that we've put together over the last 20 years. But on the expectation side, you know more than anybody why it's important. Talk a little bit about what you feel those expectations do.
Well, it gives you something to reference back when things go wrong, right? You can do your best to prep a client for what's going to happen. You try to get ahead of anything that could possibly be a roadblock as this transaction progresses or doesn't progress. And at least it gives you something that you can forward them on an email and be like, I told you so.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I asked for, you know, and I'll give a perfect example of what's going on right now. I've got a client, we're listed. I've told them in writing and in person several times, this market has shifted. We are seeing a pause right now. Your house will not sell the first weekend. And I've already gotten 4 calls the first week, like what's going on? What's taking so long? And It's like, you know, so if you hadn't said anything, then you're getting fired.
So Brent hit, and he always does.
Yeah.
I'll be here all week.
He hit the biggest takeaway for today, and this should be more meaningful for any agent that's watching this right now, because it was number one on the list of what we wanted to get through to you today, is that setting expectations right now, you better damn well be setting expectations on what this market is capable of. Because if you don't, you are asking for it. You are asking for trouble. You are coming off of the greatest amount of sales in the history this country has ever had, the highest level, the quickest level, the lowest interest rate that we'll probably never see again. You're shifting, which was our show last week, which I can't remember if I posted yet or not, but we're shifting. And when you're caught in that shift, you have those people that Brent's talking about that are like, what the hell is going on? We told you what the hell is going on. We told you that you are in the middle of that window coming down. And for some of you, the window is like this, it's this far from closing. The window's coming down. And what that means is it's not like your neighbor had 7 months ago. It's not the same thing. Now, is that bad? No. You talk about something that irritates me, is someone bitching about their house still selling well above what it is worth. You talk about the ultimate greed. Now, I know some of my guys, especially these guys over here, they're probably like, hey, Robert, you should go easy on that. I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Because it's upsetting that these people are making a lot of money. And they're upset when we're trying to tell them that it's coming down a little bit, but you're still bathing in money. You know, I'm not that big of a religious guy. I believe in God and all that type of stuff. Not that that matters. But, you know, gluttony is big, right? Gluttony is a big thing about being too, it's almost like that. It's almost like you get so absorbed that it's not the worst of things. You're still selling so far above what you're doing. Now, look, I got two people on here right now that might tell me that that's what they're thinking. I know Brent was thinking he's the greediest person I know. And he did that in his house. And he is lucky. He got his sold for. Carol's doing it right now, probably in the middle of it. She's probably thinking that. She's still doing great too. But they're like, of course I want it to be high. It's one thing for it wanting to be high. But it's another thing to be angry when it doesn't. And that's the point I'm making. Is being angry about it. Like Brent's hitting at us telling some people, hey, look, it might take us a little longer than it normally does. You know, so you should expect this a week later. What's going on? Why are there no showings? What I'm telling you. We told you that was going to happen. We're not surprised by this. It's not a shock, which that is why that is the biggest takeaway from today, is that it shouldn't be a shock.
Yeah, Brent really nailed it. You know, removing the roadblocks and preparing them for the values. You know, but because I'm doing that not only with myself, I haven't been very realistic, but I even have clients that like, oh no, I want to ask 150,000 more than what you're saying. It's worth more than that. You know, even though I'm showing them.
What do I know?
Yeah, even though I'm showing them it's not. You know, and I'm trying to set them up to be very realistic about it. You know, I don't want to sit there and waste my time and their time with something nutty like that. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing the new word now, price improvement. And
Jim hates that.
I hate that word because it just says
price improvement.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, it is a reduction, but it largely it's like, okay, I'm finally getting realistic is what it's really saying. You know.
Well, and it goes back and forth in the same conversation that the general public has a perception. And that's why you can get away with words like that, because it means something that it really probably shouldn't. And it just, it kills me as well. You know, you said something else that I literally, I'll go to my grave. I cannot, especially now, understand when anyone in this quad panel here is told by someone, oh, it's worth a lot more that doesn't specialize in this. I'm like where do you get off telling us that? I go, how can you possibly think with all the time that we've done this, that you know more about it than we do? I mean, where would you think that even makes sense? That's like me going into busting into the operating room or the ER and going, doctor, that is not where that heart goes. It needs to be put here. I mean, it's no different. I tell you, the poor real estate agents, their expertise in their craft, it does not get equivalent to, or it doesn't get its equivalent due to the attorney and the doctor near what it should. And I would argue the real estate attorney has more effect in your life than those other two people, except the doctor if you're dying. I'll give them that, but the fact that people will come in and say, oh, well, that's wrong. I'm like, what planet do we live on where you would think that after I told you that you're right and what we said was wrong? It just kills me. So I told y'all we've been doing the podcast a little different the last few weeks. We're rebuilding the Smoker Broker site to focus on the podcast. My producer gets on me all the time because I drag my feet on it. And I've been very polite about saying it's Brent's fault because he's not doing it quick enough. But we're trying to get more of the shows on there. And, seriously, Brent, there's a lot of people that have been going to that. I've noticed every once in a while you see another like. Yep. I'm pretty sure that those are the people that we interview that are going there because they tell me that. I know a lot of my students do it too, but it is a reinforcement that we need to really and this is on me. I'm joking about you. We need to, the producer's been on me about we need to do hooks and we need to, start presenting it. And we're going to. And we're going to. I'm delayed on it. Because a lot of the projects that I have, it just takes a while for me, but we are set in pushing that show because of the information it has. Now, the reason why I'm saying it is we created the format differently, where we started bringing on a lot of our core agents that don't regularly host with us because they offer a lot of value, and we want to give them the exposure. Now, I'm biased towards the one we have today, Miss Carol Goodman, who's, I think, below me on this thing right here, right now, depending on where you're looking. But I'm biased in the fact that, I'll play favorites every once in a while, but I play favorites with the people that we know are capable of doing a job that they're already more experienced than they probably should be, and they're only going to get better and better at it. Some people do it quicker than others. Some people are naturals at it, and Carol's one of them. Carol,
for sure,
an integral part of the team, just as Laura is, who was on the show earlier, and Sandy last week. We don't put anybody in any specific order, but Carol's a little different in the fact that not only is it the fact that she's just a good agent, it's her entire background that drives into what it is that she does. There are a lot of people who are good in real estate. That's not that they were good salespeople. I don't even like, I've made it, said it for years. I don't like being called it. I put it on our websites, our social sites. I don't like being called a salesperson because I don't think that's what I am. But Carol's one of those that over the years, all of her experience, it just gels into common sense, intelligence, practicalities in all forms of houses. She's skilled at being able to sell every freaking one of them. She's probably one of and just like I said with Laura, I'm not going to call her up and coming because that would be an insult to Carol because she's past beyond up and coming. She's sold more luxury homes than Brent has in 15 years, so yep. It's easy to make those comments, but Carol, in all honesty, your clients are lucky. They're lucky.
Thank you.
The people around you are lucky. the family that you have is lucky. We're lucky. You're just that type of person that people want to be around. We are fortunate that that we get to be in your world, and we started bringing people like you on the show, one, to showcase you for your clients, but more important, to add to the show itself because of the knowledge you have. Laura was on before, and it's amazing the topics that someone for Laura who like hasn't been doing that long would bring up, and we're like, that's perfect, because we wouldn't even talk about that. I would dare to say that you have the equivalent knowledge to what me, Brent, and Jim have had. Even though it's been a shorter time for you, your experience level is just as ridiculous. And I think that's what really makes you the agent that you are. Honestly, all the qualities that you have, your best one are your street smarts. It's your ability to be able to look at something and go, I don't think it's going to work like that. And it really, I'm talking a lot about it because I don't think there's enough we can say. I'm going to let Brent, I know, wants to say something because I think he's your biggest fan too.
And he told me he wanted to be just like her.
He does.
I do.
He
I really
wishes,
love Carol.
He wishes he could be
I
just
do.
like her.
Yeah.
Poor Brent. He
I do
deserves
too.
the shit he gets because he's just bad with it. But we joke with him. But in all seriousness, that's the type of agent we want on here. Now, Carol, with that, you've just been killing it. Regular houses, luxury houses, ranches, multiple areas, Dallas-Fort Worth, the coast, San Antonio. It doesn't matter where you're at. And my guess is you'll eventually, at some time, even throughout the country, go in other places. This expectation stuff, a lot of people don't know your background. And I'm still in awe of your military presence and your experience there. But you would agree that helps you a lot with what you do today, doesn't it? Because expectation, the military, they're all about expectation.
Well, I think, it started back in the military. You move every 2 to 3 years. And I made the decision from the beginning to always buy a home everywhere I moved. But as my, rank and pay went up, I didn't really change the price range that I would buy. And I had to argue, with my significant other about it. But I was very set that we got to turn this, and we need to be able to sell and buy again in our 5-day, house hunting. And I always did that. And the further along I went, it was harder to justify, but I'm like, I just need enough room for the kids, for us to have a good home. But when we sell it in 2 to 3 years, you can make enough money, where you're not losing anything. Because, I was in from, 92 to 2006. So there was a lot of changes in the market during that time. And I got my real estate license in 2014. So I really had, at the time, the broker I had back in San Antonio, I was like, I wish I get buyers. I got listings. He goes, listings are lasters. You're good there. I'm like, yeah, but it's hard to do listings at that time. It wasn't easy. And you're like, they want to
talked about that, Carol, in the last
month. And I'm like, gosh, can I have longer than 6 months? Can I have 9 months to sell this home? And now people would lose their mind if you told them that.
So, Carol, that's funny. We talked about that a little while ago on the show, that we've got a whole batch of agents over the last 6 or 7 years that they're about to start learning. They're going to have to be able to explain themselves when a house has sat for 90 days. And, you just said something that really attributes to exactly what we're talking about with you. You have not been in the market long enough that you haven't seen that, but you already said you know it because it's happened to you so many times in your own past. One of the things that makes you special as well is your multiple experiences in selling houses on your own. That sometimes is one of the best requirements for being a real estate agent, is that you've done it on your own enough that you can relate to somebody else and you can be like, hey, look, This is how it is. Anybody watching the podcast, especially in archive and replay, notice how Carol, it was just a natural spiel. That's how she would have talked to her client if she was advising them. It's the same thing, one way or the other. So, thanks for proving my point when you're observing things.
I recently I actually feel that I'm not a salesperson. I don't like the sales side of it.
Nope.
But I am a leader, and I tend to, when I do get that opportunity, I'm able to capture it. And the last agents that I've worked with on the other side, one of my buyers got the house because she was like, I'm a bus driver. I've only had 2 transactions. My first one has both were listings. The buyer, the funding, and we've had to extend. It should have closed 3 weeks ago. My seller's all mad at me. And this one, I need to make sure. I'm like, you don't have to worry about that with me. And I kind of guided her through the type of mortgage and local lender she should be looking for with the buyer she had and what she should know. And I was like, we're going to close on time. Do not worry. Even though I had a contingent offer,
Yeah.
I was able to tell her that, but she said that she was dealing with that. Well, why do I have to take a contingent offer? My neighbor got 20 offers 60 days ago, and
Yeah.
that expectation thing's happening. It's going to get worse. I've got a listing appointment coming up that I'm worried
Someone
about.
like you, the expectations is more emphasized because not only are you going to set them, but it's your follow through with them. You have many strengths, but one of your biggest is I don't think you're ever going to be pushed around. And I don't think anybody would even try because I think they know what they would get back. But sometimes when you have those negative expectations and they come up, you're more capable of handling. We're talking about confrontation. It's part of this job. It's part of this business. And it helped the expectation was set. One, that it was set, but one, you're able to handle the confrontation. Some people don't set the expectation and they suck at the confrontation part of it, or they're scared of it. So one of the reasons why we wanted you to do this particular one is we know that you're good at both of them. And it makes a difference when you're looking at things. Mark, while I'm thinking about it, before I forget, Carol is a good potential for on the mentor project as well. Her military rank in the Air Force, her military background truly is incredible. And it shows in everything she does. So we might want to talk about that. You can go ahead and put that mentor project live up there again. That's a sub podcast we do with business in general. We like to promote that on the show. Carol, be more specific with me. Actually, Jim, you start it, and then let's let Carol come back in on it, because I don't know what Brent's doing in his black and square over there. But are you doing that intentionally?
Huh?
Are you blacking that out intentionally? I told you you're supposed to be running this one today. Listen
Yeah, well, that never happens.
Listen to my voice.
I'm doing a mortgage application. What do you want from me?
Lord, more than that, I can tell you. Jim, why do the sellers, it's important we set expectations to when we meet them. Well, because this is the heart of this podcast. We're talking about the expectations on the seller and the buyer side. What do we tell the seller when we meet them? What are some of the things we're concerned about that they might need to know down the road?
Well, besides doing a CMA on the property, I think the big thing is letting them know what needs to be fixed in order to get that price. And, and just simple things also like, because a lot of them just think, again, like I said before, I got this one client that wants that $150,000 to a price, but they don't want to do any repairs and they need $200,000 repairs, which is kind of crazy. But I think I've got them kind of back down on that. But
well, there's an expectation there too.
Yeah.
If they're not going to listen to your advice, they're going to have to be ready for what comes from it. And I think so a lot of different ways.
And then I guess even going down to, staging the property, or even how to, showings, what to expect out of showings, You know, I mean,
One, and that's kind of what we were talking about a minute ago.
you know,
That is truly, I mean, there are thousands of expectations. And this show can go on forever. But the one for sure right now is the one we started off with, the one that you just hinted at is they better realize that it's not as many as it was before, but it's still great. And if that expectation is not set, what I'll take it back. Brent had a good example. He set the expectation. He knows good and well to set it. He set it, but he still got the comment. The great part about setting the expectation and then still getting the comment is the follow-up to, I told you so.
Yeah.
The reason why you set the expectation is twofold. One, to prepare them for it. Two, to be able to respond to it when they say something. You don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to be surprised. Look, I bash myself and I'll say what I'm good at. There's more bad than probably there is good. But I'll tell you one thing that I'm very good at, and it is making sure somebody knows what's expected. And if it happens, they're not looking at me like you never told me. I'm like, that never goes on with me. I am always very clear about what could possibly happen, especially with a client. There is no client. I've had tons of them. Sometimes they do not like what I say. But you better believe when it happens, they do not have some dumbass look on their face. Because that's the difference between a lot of the experienced agents and the newer agents. The newer agents don't know how to set the expectation.
One of the favorite ones that you ever taught me was, and I after you said it, I make sure I call all my buyers. Hey, just so you know, they're going to cash that option check and that earnest check. So don't just think they're holding it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, 1 out of 1,000. And you know, because you have studied the background that I've had for the longest time, you know that came from my second deal where my first deal was new construction. The builder didn't cash the earnest money. So my assumption, hence the name assumption, makes an ass of you, was that they don't cash it. Well, I'll be damned on that second one. They cashed it. And guess who ended up paying $2,000 in NSF fees because I told them that they wouldn't.
you know, I think a lot of it in setting the expectations, and you know, it's like just like this one client I'm talking about. As you walk, I'll do a lot more listening a lot of times, and listen to them. As you walk around the house, I say, "Show me your house," and they're pointing out the things that they convince themselves on. Well, that's okay. All of a sudden, when they're showing it to somebody else, they suddenly realize, you know, this is not okay. You know,
Yeah.
And that helps set those expectations with the seller on what a property is worth. They kind of come to that determination themselves eventually.
You brought up a good point. A lot of times when a seller is disagreeing with our price, like I said, which I'm like, I don't know why you're questioning it, but sometimes when they do, one of the most effective tools as far as defining the expectation is go show them the same house at the same price.
Mm-hmm.
You already know what it's going to be like. All you have to do is just keep looking back at them, and it always comes back to, I tried to tell you, I don't know why you weren't listening to me. And what you find with expectations is not only does it prepare you to counter the situation itself, but it restores that person's faith in you that you're there for a reason and that you know what you're doing and that they should listen to you.
Well, and one of the worst things too is when something happens and you should have told them. You know, you think about it, you forgot to tell them, and you're like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's no way out of it.
Those could be my worst days. My worst days, I guarantee you every one of them was something that I probably did not tell them was more of a probability, and it ended up happening. And it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It breeds incompetence. They should never be surprised in a real estate environment. We were talking about the seller. Y'all had some great expectations in there. You know, the showings, we're already setting those. You know, the next thing that we haven't discussed yet, but you're seeing it, and this is a huge takeaway for the show today too. You have to tell the seller, you take listing, I'm going to list it here, but there is a very good probability that we are going to have to lower a significant amount. And I don't want you looking at me like it's a surprise when I tell you to do it. This is huge right now, because what's happening is we have a seller that is still thinking their house is worth what it was 7 months ago. And I'll try, because some of them will get it. I'll be like, we're going to take a shot at it. I go, but I need you to listen to me. I go, there's a chance that that thing's 50,000 less. And don't boo-hoo that that's a possibility. It was already $200,000 over where it should have been. I go, so if I tell you it might be 50,000 less, you need to be prepared that we're going to do that. This is the epitome of setting an expectation, because when I tell them that should be an immediate, okay, no problem, Robert. It shouldn't be a, hey, you never said that. What the hell? I'm not doing that. You start doing that type of stuff, then they start looking for another agent because they think you're doing bait and switch on it. Expectations right now, all-time high with how long is it going to take and what am I going to get and what should I expect? What is the ultimate goal here? Is to be greedy and get as much as I possibly can and I'm pissed that I don't? Or is it being greedy and being happy that I get it? Or is it being just content that I did so well? The expectation has to be set. And this hasn't changed. I wrote that when I started the firm. Very proud of the introduction that we train our agents on. What I wrote has not changed in 20 years. It's still the exact same damn thing we're supposed to tell those people when we go in.
You know what's working for me right now is I'm a math major, numbers person. So I've been doing that. You know, I had 2 homes recently that I listed and they were like, sounds like you don't think I'll get more than that. You know, when I said I want to list 30,000 less than what you do, these were homes that were under 300. One of them was. And I said, well, but when you bought this, you know, you're still starting out 250% above what you bought for 20 years ago.
That's such a good
We're going to get 250% above, and I'm sure we're going to get above, but I don't want to go higher because it's not really worth it. You know,
Brent's taking notes right now. He's like, oh, that's good.
And then the other one, we went above, and I said we need to drop the price $20,000 because they were doing a contingent. They called me, said, I need you to list my house in 3 days and sell it in 30. Because we went out to Gonzales, Texas and found this antique old historic home and we put an offer and we got it and now we have to sell our house. And I was like, all right, well, you've had this house for 8 years, but it's 20 something years old. You've never changed the carpet. It looks like crap. So we need to put in there, we're going to replace the carpet first off. And then we went along and then I told them the same thing. I was like, so we were going to get 245% over what you pay because this was a Fannie Mae floor closure bank home you bought for way under what you should have 7 years ago. You're going to do great even at 230%. And we're going to get you sold in 30 days. And we did. And they're happy now. But I have to do the numbers game. And some of them, it goes right over their head. And so I was like, okay, my approach with them is different. I need to actually show them what kind of cash they're going to have at closeout.
So look.
That's the way I handle it.
I'm getting fired right now.
Well, I mean, you know, I normally would say yes, but I fire myself too because y'all, her takeaway, you know, I joked that Brent was taking notes, and when I said that, it meant I was, because that line about that, well, you already have it for 250% more, that comment right now is probably one of the best comments in this market to tell a seller. because that right there is setting the table for, don't even give me the disappointment crap about, you know, you're not selling at 800 versus 700. You're already way over where you should have been. That comment is freaking brilliant. And it is no doubt probably going to be sent out to all of our guys today.
That's in our core. That's our core meeting, though.
I mean, it's just, for myself, I'm listening to that. That's a great way to tell them what I'm thinking, because I don't want to hear that from them when I tell them two things. When I tell them they need to drop, or what they're going to accept. Because both of those, it goes back to my, damn. I go, how much more can you expect? It used to be a 20% increase is awesome. Now you're at, 150 and you're upset by it. That's so good.
Well, you go back to you need to keep a home 7 years so that you can make some money after you pay all your seller fees when you sell. And there's a lot of people out there right now that have had their house 2 or 3 years and they think they're going to make 100,000 off of it, and they may have. I would be sick to my stomach if I was a buyer back in March right now.
Yeah. And so,
and I was a seller in April.
I will. That's a great
Exactly.
comment. Protect, at least if our agents were doing the right things, and I know I did too. Anybody we sold to, we made it clear to them that they're overpaying. And well, like, look, all you have to do is read a paper. You're overpaying, and you know it. But you're right, Carol. I would be sick, but the only thing I would be thankful for, well, it might be two things. One, the rate was so freaking low. I might be thankful for that. And two, and boy, this is coming big time, is if it was an assumable note, I might be pretty happy right now, because I've got one of the government notes that are assumable that was at 3.5%, and we're looking at 6.5% and 7% on our back door. Got a lot of power in selling my house right now. So you're right. But the defense to that is telling those people, hey, look, this is what should have been said. Once again, setting expectations when we did this way back when. So I freaking love that.
Well, and I don't personally mean, I didn't really have any buyers that went crazy over.
Yeah.
Because my expectations to buyers back then was, okay, because I've heard agents tell me, don't waste your time with time wasters.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if I'm wasting my time, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Because I look at okay, you're a conventional with 5% down, a few months back. Don't tell me you want to see every shiny penny home that comes out that's going to have 50 people at the open house and 10 offers by 2 days later, because we don't have a snowball's chance to get that one. Let's be smarter. Let's go to open door homes. Let's go look at the homes that have sat. Let's go do this. And every one of them, we got the first offer we made.
Y'all, everything she's talking about is setting an expectation. She is setting an expectation. The buyer doesn't even know it. She's flat out telling them, look, there's no reason to do this. You're looking at this over here. This is your reality. This is your best shot. And she even had the proof of it, that most of her offers were taken in a market that was very hard to get that. So that's another brilliant freaking takeaway. I almost hate doing this show because it cuts off so many freaking topics. In fact, we're going to do it again soon, because we're not even close to where I want to be with setting expectations for the disasters at close, because that's one of the worst. Setting the expectations for what's going to happen during the process, during the appraisal process, during the inspection. We didn't even get to, y'all, we did an inspection show on clients. We got through intro, which that's great, because that means there's so much data. We didn't even get to we could have done expectations on inspections alone, which we probably will,
You probably should have set the expectations for what we were going to talk about.
Well, that's the problem with not setting. Yeah. So hypocritically, he is right. The one place I don't set an expectation is on this freaking show, because it's just too hard because the topics are so general. So I say that jokingly because I love us getting to the end of our podcast and we're not even.
So I think we were all insulted because if he's not setting expectations on the show, that means he'll let anybody on.
I will, right? I mean,
You let us on, right, Jim?
You two,
Yeah, I guess
you
so.
are here all the time. I could have had Carol on today. I would have been just fine, right?
Yeah.
We could have let Carol run the show, and we would have been just fine. It's
No one wants to hear this Southern drawl voice very long.
hey, look,
Ah,
the fact that you're in Texas, that serves you very well. Maybe in New York, you'd have a few more issues, but here, there's
It
just
didn't
no.
work in Boston for me very well. I was dumb. I was considered dumb.
But,
Especially when you say I'm fixing to.
you should you already do use your advantage because they can think that all you want. Whatever's coming out is going to be pretty damn sharp. So I think they're almost scared when you talk, when they hear you and they start listening to you. And God knows if they knew what your background was, they damn well would pay attention to you. So I want to end with this. It's one of my favorite topics. I live my life by it. And I like to think I'm successful because of it, because I love organization. I love, and I think organization comes from setting expectations, because I think that's how you create plans, you innovate, and you execute. It's all the same thing with the expectations. So I love the topic. I love the fact that we had Carol on. It's why we wanted to do these shows. It's why we want to expose the agents. Any of Carol's clients who watch this, they already know what we're talking about. And y'all, any of you who know Carol and you haven't reached out, I don't even know how it's possible you ever go anywhere else. We're talking about people who know her, strangers as well. But the people who know her, I 20 years, I've trained over 100,000 agents. She is in the top 1% of how those people are capable of applying what they've learned their entire life, meaning they're not experienced. They are, even though it's in a different field, it really doesn't matter. So you guys are lucky to know her. You're lucky to have had her. You're lucky to eventually use her. And if you're not telling everybody else how good she is, then, well, I don't know what it is that you're doing, because they're just not going to find any better. I want to thank everybody out there for listening. Always want to make sure that you guys catch up. Always go to joinswr.com for those of you who are interested in real estate. A lot of people who watch our podcast are, in fact, previous or current students of mine, or new agents that are looking for help in desperation because they cannot find it. This show was designed specifically for you. We don't make money off of it. We reinforce our brand with it. And we joke about it. We get a lot of people who cyber stalk us because they want to find out how we are. We love the podcast because it lets people get to know us a little bit better inside of brief interactions, such as interviews or sponsorships that we do. So we appreciate you watching. You should share this to not only agents you think would need help with this, especially if you're in supervisory roles, but especially to your clients as well that you think would receive it well. Some clients might not receive it as well because it's talking about them, but for others, it might be exactly what they're looking for. So thank you guys for watching. Tune in next week. We'll have another fantastic topic. I actually planned the summer out, so we have some great topics and guests coming on. And I think we're heading toward financing, inspection, and investments in the up and coming weeks. So look forward to having you guys on. Carol, Jim, and Brent, thanks for being on. As soon as I cut off, I'm going to leave, so I won't be in the back room there with you guys. But usually I would thank y'all there, but I'm going to go ahead and thank y'all now. And Mark, as always, thank you guys for all the help. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Have a great week.
Yep.